Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the May edition of Open Mic for Disabilities. We'll just give a few more minutes for others to join and also for our guest speaker to join us, and then we'll start. Kindly confirm if you can hear me with just an emoji so that I'll be sure that my audio is good. Great, thank you. Thank you, Luatasin. All right, I think we can start now. Good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the May edition of Open Mic for Disabilities, where we'll be discussing a very important topic, which is disability and mental health in Nigeria, overcoming stigma and strengthening support systems. The Open Mic for Disability is part of a broader initiative, which is the Disability Empowerment Employability Program, which we call DEEP. And the aim of this conversations and webinars that we have monthly is to dismantle stereotypes and stigma, and then build the confidence of persons with disability, and also ensure that workplace readiness for persons with disability and opportunities that are available for them. And then with me, joining me on this particular edition is no other than our guest speaker, the Executive Director of She Writes Women, Mrs. Hauwa Ojeifo. You guys can just clap with your emojis and as I introduce her. You're welcome. I don't know if you can hear me. Kindly confirm that you can hear and see me. It's an honor to have you. I'll just go through her bio now so that we can know who we have with us in this particular session, even as we, kick off everything. So Mrs. Hauwa Ojeifo is the Executive Director of She Writes Woman, an award-winning movement that gives mental health a voice in Nigeria. She's the creator of Safe Place Nigeria, a digital community for mental health conscious Nigerians to access tools, resources, and 24/7 toll-free helpline. She also holds an MSc in Investment Banking and Islamic Finance from Henley Business School, University of Reading, England, and has a career that spans 6 industries, including health, finance, fashion, events planning, retail services, and digital marketing. She's a certified integrative mental health coach who uses her psychosocial disability to advocate for people like herself across Nigeria and beyond. Ms. Hauwa is a recipient of the prestigious Queen's Young Leaders Award 2018 by the Royal Commonwealth Society, Cambridge University, and the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Trust. She was selected as a One Young World Ambassador and AstraZeneca Young Health Program Scholar. She was also shortlisted by 2 consecutive years as one of the top 100 most inspiring Nigerian women 2018 by Leading Ladies Africa and Advanced Media's top 100 most influential young Nigerians, as the first African to bag the MTV Europe Music Generational Change Award in 2018, and was also honored as an Obama Africa Leader. There's still very much to say about who we have in the room with us today, but I'll just stop here and then welcome her to Open Mic for Disabilities May edition. It's nice to meet you, Ma. I don't know if you can hear or see me. I can't see. Okay, yes, I can see you now. Good afternoon, Ma. It's a pleasure to have you. I don't know if I would like you to just sort of introduce aspects of yourself that I may not have captured in your bio so that our guests, our audience can get to, meet you one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Hello, everyone. My name is Hauwa Ojeifo, founder and executive director at She Writes Woman Mental Health Initiative. We're a movement that gives mental health a voice in Nigeria by empowering those who have lived experiences to tell their stories, co-create solutions, and advocate for their rights. And our ultimate mission is to get people with disabilities, psychosocial disabilities included, into decision-making rooms, all decision-making rooms. And part of how we do that work, and why it should be evident why I need to say this, part of how we do that work is to first document and report on those lived experiences, whether it's the good or the not so good. The second is to provide care and support along the way. So we have teletherapy, helpline, support groups, and things like that. And lastly, we build your capacity to be able to sit meaningfully, to be consulted robustly, to lead and champion at decision-making tables and spaces, especially those that have to do directly with us, as people with disabilities or people with mental health conditions as well. You've already covered a lot, Debbie. I think it's fine. We can go on. Aside that, yes, I am a person with a psychosocial disability. I think would also set context to the conversation that we're having here today. I live with a mental health condition or multiple mental health conditions and psychosocial disabilities. And that is what actually led to starting my organization, She Writes Women, and perhaps has also given me a bit of a different kind of point of view when creating solutions around mental health and disability rights and things like that as a person with lived experience and a person with a disability myself. Where do we begin?
Thank you so much for that. So I think I would just like to begin from what you just said. You're a person with a psychosocial disability. A lot of people don't really understand what that means. So can you just break that for us and then move on to tell us when you realize that that is a powerful story that should not just be kept for yourself, but for others too? I think you're muted.
All right. So this was about 10 years ago. When so let me go back a little bit more. So obviously the thing about mental health or when it comes to psychosocial disabilities is that sometimes you're living with something and you don't know that you're living with it, and sometimes that's dependent on awareness, other times it's dependent on acceptance, sometimes it's dependent on even whether you just are ready to face that aspect of your life, so your willingness and ability to be able to face that aspect of your life. And so for me, I think I knew that something would come out of getting sexually abused multiple times many years ago. But I sort of tried to just go on because I've always been inclined to this space of social support and work and social change and areas around sexual violence, domestic violence, things that had to do with the marginals. So people on the sidelines, issues that are under the carpet and things like that. And so for me, I kind of knew that something was going to come out of it because shortly after I got raped and, for the first couple of years, I dealt with what is usually called like the psychosomatic symptoms of you know, living with a mental health condition. So for me, I developed lactose intolerance all of a sudden. I had irritable bowel syndrome all of a sudden. Ulcer exacerbated, things that despite all medical intervention just didn't go and they just came out of nowhere. And so those are things that can be directly tied back to trauma when you go through a traumatic life experience and what that experience does to you on the inside, because trauma is not really what happened, it's what happened to you on the inside as a result of what happened. And so what happened to me on the inside was a lot of issues around self-confidence, self-worth, self-esteem. There must be something with me that caused somebody to see me as an object that needed to be raped. And so I had to deal with that in silence throughout those years. And so I dealt with the psychosomatic symptoms because I had to see the person who raped me almost every single workday for about a year. And so I continued to be very guarded about it because obviously we're living in an environment where there's a lot of victim blaming and it's a textured conversation, so to speak. And a lot of people are not willing to hear, when we say just believe the victim, things like that. So I knew that there were issues that were coming up after I got raped, but I got like an official diagnosis in 2016. And it was about a couple of months after that I started She Writes Woman. So I got a diagnosis first of depression. But when I had those conversations, first with the psychologist and then with the psychiatrist, there was a pattern of this may not just be depression. There might be something else, but we will go the depression route first. And if you react a certain type of way with this certain type of intervention, then we would know that it's bipolar. And, to cut the long story short, I went into hypomania because the medications triggered, it kind of took me a little too high out of depression into hypomania. And then, the bipolar diagnosis came through. And of course, because of the sexual abuse, I also was living with post-traumatic stress disorder as well. So I live with bipolar and PTSD. And yeah, so that was how I knew. I had a near suicide attempt that I finally was able to open up to my family to be able to say, okay, fine, I need help because I did everything up to that point by myself in a way that was very secretive. And then after that, I had to bring everyone on board because obviously people feared for what was going to happen to me. I feared for what was going to happen to me. And so that was where the journey, in a sense, in a way of awareness and consciousness, really started.
Wow, that's really a powerful story, and it's just interesting to see the different, stages that eventually, led you to set up She Writes Woman. And I think that One of the questions I would like to ask is, what do you think is a part of living with a mental health condition and disability, or just disability, you wish people could see and not stir up, it won't stir up pity, but they will just understand? Because a lot of the times, I don't know if you got that question. So the question is, what part of living with a mental health condition or disability do you wish people could see, not to pity, but understand?
That's a very interesting one. What part of living with a disability can people see, right? That gives them a sense of understanding as opposed to pity.
Yes.
So the activist in me is jumping out. So I I don't feel like people with disabilities owe anybody any sort of way to present themselves so that they don't get pitied and all. I feel like, you know what, however you live with a disability and you want to communicate your plight. I mean, we're in Nigeria. It's a horrible situation for people with disabilities. It's horrible to say the least, you know. You cannot cater for people who you don't see. And that's the underlying problem when it comes to disabilities in Nigeria. We don't actually see people with disabilities. You know, we pass them on the road. They are in your religious institutions. They are in some of the healthcare centers. You pass them, but you don't really see them. Because if you really see people and you really look at them and you think about them and you acknowledge their existence, then maybe we would all start to have a better conversation around disabilities in Nigeria, right? And so I don't think so much about, oh, the person with disability needs to present a certain type of way so that people don't pity them. I think it's every other person's responsibility. So it's
Sorry about
everyone's
that.
responsibility, no problem. It's everyone else's responsibility to look at people with disabilities and not think that, hey, look, you know, hey, yeah, or it's not going to do anything. We need to move the needle here. So your AI is not going to ensure there's accessibility. Your AI is not going to put, create more, give more, I don't know, social welfare. Your AI is not going to ensure that people get mobility aids. No, it's not going to do anything like that. So I think it's first, we need to decolonize our mindset around what it means to look at people that are not like us. Because there's that idea that when you look at people who are not like you, there's a sense of AI, somehow they must wish that they are like us, right? Oh, no. That's not what the conversation is about right now. The conversation is around how do we ensure that people with disabilities are able to live their lives in a dignified way on an equal basis as other people. So, respectfully, your AI is actually your own internal superiority screaming at you. And you need to look inward and ask yourself, why do I need to feel sorry as opposed to be upset that people live like this and nobody's doing something about it? Right. And so like I said, it's not our responsibility to go out and say, oh, don't look at us with pity. Well, we can add it to our speeches and all of that, which is great, just so that people can begin to look at why they think their first sort of call is to look at people with pity, as opposed to looking at it with, you know what, there's a sense of collective responsibility to address, you know, a huge gap within the system with regards to social welfare or economic opportunities or access to aids and things like that, and free care, healthcare, and all of these things for people with disabilities.
Thank you so much. I think that perspective was really it was really salient. It was very important that you highlighted it in the way that you did. And then talking about, how our AIs is not going to fix anything. I would like to just ask the question of, in terms of, how would you describe the current state of mental health awareness and support for persons with disabilities? I know that there is a huge gap. So I would just like you to speak into what is currently available for persons with disabilities struggling with mental health issues that they do not even know that they are, and then where can they go to, what can they do, what is the current system or support that is available, and how can they assess that?
So I think this conversation is happening just at a very perfect time because we've spent the last 2 weeks. Now we've done about 7 cluster bodies or umbrella organizations where we have had conversations with these bodies around the intersection of psychosocial disabilities across their different disability clusters. And I'm going to reiterate something I have said all through the week. There is no disability cluster that does not have a psychosocial component. It's just not possible. I think one of the reasons why we somehow think that's kind of like separate is because we still have the idea where we're looking at mental health from this illness perspective, where some people are predisposed to like some things biologically, and so they're condemned to that fate, as opposed to looking at it from a psychosocial model. When you look at it from a psychosocial model, you know that just by the mere fact that you live in Nigeria as a person with a disability, you are predisposed to certain issues that would cause issues around grief, trauma, isolation, right? And I'm focusing on those 3 because I do believe that they cut across at least as one of the first sets of feelings that come through before we then start to throw out the labels and things like that. So we've gone to the National Association of the Blind, we've gone to Albinism Association of Nigeria, National Association of Persons with Physical Disabilities, Nigerian National Association of the Deaf, JONAP, Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities, and now Spinal Cord Injuries Association of Nigeria. And I can tell you that across the board, it is not as if people with disabilities don't know that there is a mental health component or psychosocial component of what they're dealing with. It's just, again, and this ties more broadly to what the landscape is around mental health, is the fact that once we hear mental health, because of how mental health is sold, we're like, I know it's not me, I'm okay. But once we start getting into the conversation around, are there circumstances where you felt like you needed to isolate yourself? Of course. Of course. You tried to access a building you did not. Your exam wasn't inclusive of your own peculiar needs as a person with disabilities. Or you went for an educational opportunity they didn't want to get to take you. Or you tried to get a job and they didn't want, this person with albinism there because, culturally, in some cultures, persons with albinism bring bad luck. Or, it is layered and textured. But do you understand what it means to grieve a life that you could have lived? Absolutely. Do you know what it feels like that when you try to go out there and put yourself out there, it's like the world is saying you don't have a place here, and so you isolate? Absolutely. So do you understand what I mean by it cuts across? So irrespective of what the disability group is, there is a mental health component. There is a component that keeps you up at night. This is a question I've thrown at every single place that we've gone. Has there been something where you felt like something bugged you so much that you lost sleep? That is how we create universal experiences. And it's not by, throwing labels and things like that. It's about understanding the reality of what really connects all of us when we are going through the challenges of as people with disabilities in Nigeria. And so whether we like it or not, it is there. It is there in a systemic perspective. It is there from an individual perspective. It is there by virtue of the fact that socially, culturally, religiously, in terms of infrastructure, care, welfare, and all of that, we are systematically disadvantaged and marginalized. And so that already it's already sort of like brings in the social elements to it. And then the other aspects, it's coming internally, because why not? We're human beings. If you continuously get rejected, we have a fundamental need for belonging in a society or in the spaces that we crave. And if you're not accepted there, of course, it takes a hit to self-confidence and self-esteem. If you know that you are made of more, but you cannot finish your exam because they've given you a computer-based exam, but look, you're a person with albinism and you have low vision, of course you're going to feel sad and down. Of course, when your potential has been shrunk, has shrunk by the virtue of the environment that you live in, of course it's going to take a hit at your self-confidence. And so those are mental health issues. I always tell people, you don't need to go into the sidelines of the extremes and things like that. Not necessarily. There is a place for that. And there are places of people who
Hi, I don't know if anyone can hear me. I think there must have been a network glitch. Okay. Do we still have Miss Hauwa with us? Let me just check that. Hi, Miss Hauwa, are you still with us? I think we lost you for a moment. Okay, I think the network has sort of kicked her out because I can't.
So I'm back. Sorry,
Okay,
I
she's
don't
back.
even
All right,
understand.
great.
Yes,
It's fine. Thank
I
you.
was saying those barriers are enough to
Yeah,
send anybody over the edge.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's important that people are aware that it doesn't have to be the extremes, like you said, but confirm if they can hear me because my screen is frozen and I don't know if it's my network or, okay, great. I think we're back. Sorry about the network glitches. That's some of the things that happen when we were doing this virtual conversations. So I was just going to quickly move on to what a lot of people call internalized stigma. And I want you to sort of break that down because I've seen, even as a Nigerian woman, you face some stigma, some stereotypes, some. Hello?
I don't
Hello,
know if
can
it's
anyone
on
hear,
my end, but
can
I
anyone hear
stopped
me?
hearing you.
Okay, so I was asking if for you to sort of break down what internalized stigma feels like and how can people.
Hello, please just confirm that you can hear me.
I can actually hear you, but I stopped hearing.
Debbie. So I think she has a
Yes.
network glitch, and I'll just take the question she was trying to take, and probably she can come back before we take it on. But thank you so much, Awa, for being here. Again, what we are having this afternoon, for anyone that is joining from Nigeria, is actually called Open Mic for Disabilities, and Awa is really shedding a lot of light into mental health. So I heard her ask you a question around what internalized stigmatization is and what is that with respect to mental health. And maybe you can shed a bit more light into that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Internalized stigma. Whew, it makes sense. That's what I'll say. Internalized stigma makes sense because if you tell anyone, anybody, irrespective, we're not even talking about people with disabilities now. If you tell anybody, either from a young age or maybe they are born into a society where people talk about something a certain type of way, look at certain people a certain type of way, behave a certain way to certain kinds of people, then that becomes sort of like your framework and how you engage with those groups of people, right? So when it comes to just people with mental health conditions or the conversations we've had for years, one of the things that I always talk about is how we need to reorient ourselves around mental health, because how we all grew up on some level is that we laughed at all these mad people jokes when we were growing up. We heard it in stand-up comedy. You know, they would say certain things and they would use it. Even for people with disabilities, I recall all them, you know, sometimes Night of 1,000 Laughs CDs and things back then. You know, they want to portray somebody with a disability and they would mimic the walk and they would laugh and, you know, all of those things. So you see, when something is socially acceptable, when you come into that place, there is a tendency, as the person that is the object of ridicule, there is a tendency to look at yourself and say, perhaps I am really that way. Perhaps that is who I am. I am somebody that should be ridiculed. I am somebody that can be used as an object of, you know, comedy or some news or skit or whatever that may be, right? And so that is the beginning of internalized stigma. It is a type of stigma where people say you're stigmatizing yourself. But one of the reasons I have a problem with it is because it kind of makes it look like the responsibility is on you, like it's your fault that you're internalizing the stigma. But the truth is that it makes sense. It's a natural consequence from when you are in an environment where certain norms and cultures and certain kinds of behavior are considered acceptable. And so what happens? You just flow with it. You know, and so that's what happens a lot of times as far as mental health conditions or disabilities are concerned, is that people with disabilities have constantly been objects of ridicule, have been objects of miracles, of prayer points, of props, and things like that. And so at some point, they look at it as, maybe this is why I'm here. If I cannot get access to quality education, or I cannot get inclusive education, I cannot get this and that, then maybe I should stand and pose and they will give me money at the end of it and all of that. So it looks like on some level, it looks like a certain type of debasement of self, you know, but it is not that you did it to yourself. It looks like, you know how they say, oh, the villain and the real villain. It looks like you're the villain, but the real villain is the system. The system is the system that has allowed for the exploitation of a certain group of people at the mercy of others is, you know, the real system. And so internalized stigma is really about, and our role really when it comes to mental health is really understanding that at the end of the day is to change the story. Because whilst nobody came to you to say, oh, you know what, oh, people are like this and people are like that, that's even a more obvious way of, you know, programming. The more powerful way of programming is subconscious. It's in what you've watched, if what you've listened to, is what's acceptable around you, is the words that we use and just say, you know, all of those things, you know, is cripple, is you know, we have certain things that we use for people with disabilities and all of that. You say it's in there, you know, and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden people pick it up and just roll with it without questioning the origins of many of these things. And any of us can fall victim. And so when there are people who actually live with these certain kinds of conditions, whether it's mental health or whether it's disabilities, what then tends to happen is that there is some level of self-infliction that is happening. You know, there's internalization of it, not because it's your fault, but because it's a natural consequence of what is happening in the society. And so we cannot go back and tell them that, on the one hand, we can't just make it like, you need to do this, you need to change the way you think about yourself. It's about reorienting around what is right or wrong within the society in terms of social norms. And so I do think that that's the angle that I would like to share around internalized stigma.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Hauwa. I was just going to hand over back to you, Debbie.
Thank you,
Because
Crystal.
I know you still have lots of questions, and I'm sure people in the audience do have questions, but this is brought or sponsored by Disability Right Funds. And I'm sure that much later, I have a couple of questions following the things that Hauwa said, and then we'll just go back to those questions when we're asking questions in the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Crystal. Like Crystal said, if you have questions, you can begin to pen them down even in the chat box, or when it's time for segments for questions, you can signify by, you know, raising your hands, and then we'll give you the mic. So, you know, hearing you talk about internalized stigma, even though I had a network glitch, I think the next question that sort of comes to mind is how, because yes, we need to change the social laws, but it's a long journey. It's a behavioral change, you know, perspective that we need to take on from there. But starting from the families, how can families, caregivers, and friends better support individuals with mental health conditions or disabilities? What is currently, you know, prevalent, what is acceptable now that you think that, okay, we can change, we can do better within, you know, those smaller units, whether it is schools, whether it's families, whether it's friends, what can we begin to, you know, do better to better support and persons with disabilities and persons, and by extension, you know, persons with you know, mental health issues?
Thank you for the question. I think the best way to start supporting people with psychosocial disabilities or disabilities generally is to know what these are ahead of when it is dire. You know, a lot of times when people are trying to find out the information is right in the middle of, let's say, for example, a crisis, or where, you know, we need to quicken the action. And so it's like, oh my gosh, this is not the time kind of thing. But I think the first thing that we all owe to ourselves, individually and collectively, is a responsibility on awareness. We need to be aware, but the awareness that is accurate, the awareness of information and knowledge that is actually accurate. And why I say that is because there is a lot of information around mental health, and a lot of it is outdated. Whether outdated from the human rights perspective, outdated from the trauma-informed perspective, outdated from, you know, the disability perspective. You know, a lot of it is outdated. A lot of it is popular, maybe because certain aspects of healthcare have been the ones championing that particular, you know, aspect of work. But I think more broadly speaking, when we try to change things around language, it shapes our perspective around things, you know. And that's why I'm very quickly years ago dropped the whole illness perspective around mental health, and, you know, started to look at it more on a disability spectrum and from a trauma-informed perspective. Like, okay, this is not something like somebody just had in their blood and then they just, you know, it's about if we can stop asking people, you know, why you're like this, and start asking what happened to you. It entirely changes the conversation from the fact that people perhaps have innate flaws or deficiencies to a conversation around something that happened within the environment. You know, somebody has, you know, PTSD, but they were raped. So don't hammer like all the identity around PTSD. Let's address an issue of rape and how that predisposed the person or became a natural consequence for the person to have post-traumatic stress. I do think that we owe it to everyone. We owe it to ourselves in terms of awareness. The second thing, that now if you're already dealing with a situation where you know that somebody has a mental health condition or a psychosocial disability, I always say, irrespective, if you really, really, really want to help, you have to subject yourself to the discomfort of having a conversation around it. That's the truth. People want to help without actually leaning in too much because it's very uncomfortable. It's very raw. It's vulnerable. And so it's like, I want to do this and this and this. I think that's what's within my team. I'm like, hold on. Have you actually talked to the person? They're like, oh, will I say, hey, I don't want to. I'm like, you have to have the conversation. First off, on the one hand, yes, it's uncomfortable, but also on the other hand, a lot of people feel like, oh, you know, the person will not really be able to. You already have the mindset that people with mental health conditions will not be able to come into the conversation fully with that sort of awareness of what they want. Actually, we can. When you give us the space and you make the necessary accommodations, we can come into that conversation fully, you know, with a sense of presence and consciousness and awareness, and with a lot of knowing what we really want. So as basic as the question is, what are you dealing with? Tell me. I want to understand. I don't know it. I feel like I've heard about it. I've read about it. I know a couple of people that talk about it, but what is it that you are dealing with? You know, how can I support you? So there's this white knight syndrome thing that happens where we see people with certain conditions and all, but we want to just jump in and be like, I saved the day, you know, I went and my boss had this and I did this and I did it. And I ask, did she send you? Is that what they said they want, right? Because what support looks like varies from person to person. Even during my own time, you know, dealing with, you know, living with a mental health condition, there were times in my journey where I felt like, you know, people wanted to do all these grand things. But what I really wanted was for somebody to do my laundry. As basic as that. Or somebody to like, please, can you wash the dishes in the kitchen? It lifted a lot for me, right? Or somebody to be able to come in the morning and say, you know what? I know you don't want to get out of bed, right? Or you don't want to go out. let me walk you to the bathroom to brush your teeth. The most mundane of tasks. Can I get a little bit of support? Right? And so that's what I think a lot of times we miss when we lose out that conversation aspect. So that's the awareness, the having the conversation, the asking the question of what does support look like to you. And I think another thing that is really powerful in the mix of supporting people with mental health conditions or psychosocial disabilities is believing them when they tell you what they need or what they are going through. A lot of times we think we are believing them, or we think that's not necessary, or it doesn't even occur to us why that is powerful. You know, when you have constantly been invalidated by something that is, for the most part, in a certain type of way, invisible, you need to work twice or three times as hard to convince people around you that, hey, look, this is valid and worth looking at. Because even sometimes you've already told yourself that if I can't see it, then perhaps I'm not really dealing with it. And so just to get the opportunity of listening to somebody and the person says, you know what, I believe you. I believe you. I may not have gone through it, but thank you for sharing this with me. It gives me a whole other perspective. I believe you. And how can I show up for you? You know, so you see how powerful it is. It doesn't, the onus is not on you to like swing in and, you know, the person that saved the day, oh, I went and I got her this, I called the doctor, and the doctor said I should do this and this. Okay, I got her those drugs. And I've been trying to get her, she doesn't want to do. Can you imagine? She's not even grateful. I'm like, in all of this, and I've seen it before, 10 years working in this space. In every, like, I hear it almost on a day to day, and I'm like, oh, what did the person say? And they're like, what person? I'm like, you're doing this for somebody, right? I'm like, yeah. So what did they say? We didn't really ask how. I'm like, wow, all of this by yourself. You could have saved yourself a lot of stress if you just had that conversation. So that's where I would say.
Absolutely. I hear you loud and clearly. A lot of the times people just think they know the answer to the problems without interacting with the persons involved. And at the end of the day, they wonder why it's not working when they could have just had a simple conversation, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable the conversation would have been. It would have saved a lot of stress and resources that you put towards an area that was not really what, they wanted. So I think I would now like to move on to asking about, policies, laws, and all of that. And I'll just simplify the question by putting it this way, if you could rewrite or introduce any law or policy in Nigeria to truly reflect the needs of the communities that we're talking about here, what would that be, and how would it look like when it's been implemented? Well, yeah.
Ooh, wow, that's interesting. So off the top of my head, I do think that there's a need for laws and policies around, let's say, things that are very specific to the CRPD. That's the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. A reasonable accommodation bill, for example, a supported decision-making policy, or something of those sorts. Like, those are things that buzz my head. So if anybody has any ideas and things like that, or wants to take that on, I'm happy to join and speak and all of those things. So supported decision-making, reasonable accommodation bill or policy. But I think something that comes to mind that I think a lot of people don't think about a lot, but I think it will, I do strongly believe, actually, I strongly believe it will cut across the board, is the experts by experience bill. I think there's a lot of pushback when people talk about lived experiences in this community, and you have a certain other community that's like, oh, so if I have malaria now, does that mean I'm not an expert in malaria? Well, it's not malaria we're talking about, right? I do think that people need to start recognizing certain groups of people as experts in their own field. And when I say in that field, I feel it is about the fact that the experience is so chronic and so deeply entrenched. It's almost as though, if not it is, an identity. And so you cannot liken it to a malaria or something else. You have to actually recognize that it is what it is, that we are experts in our own rights. We have to be on the table as subject matter experts, as experts in providing, perspective, in leading on conversations, whether it's a social discourse, in dialogues regarding the bill, in testifying at policy-making tables, at, co-creation of user-centered designs in the development space and all of that, I would say is the expert by experience. We're not just, tick two people, subject matter, or users, all of this. No, we are actually people who should lead, who should be consulted robustly, who should be at the forefront, who should be co-creators of all of these sectors as far as these issues affect us. So experts by experience.
That's wonderful. Experts by experience. I'm going to take that away, and I believe a lot of our audience are taking that away also. And I still have quite a lot of questions to ask, but because we're trying to work within the time frame that we have for this conversation, I'm going to open the floor now for those who have questions that want to ask. If you would like to ask a question, just indicate, and then the host will unmute you and give you video privileges so that you can ask those questions. Or if you would rather type them in, you can type them in, and then I would read those questions out. And then while I am waiting for some of those questions, I'd like to also call on Crystal. I know she said earlier on that she still have a lot of questions, and maybe some of the questions will be some I already have. So let me just yield the mic to her so she can ask some of the questions that came up while we're having this conversation. Crystal, are you with us? Okay. All right. I think I'll just go on to ask my questions. And also there's also an important segment of this conversation where we would also like to hear, just like Hauwa said, experts by experience. So we also like to hear persons with disabilities, share their experiences dealing with mental health issues, or a time where they, triumphed one thing or the other, and where they stood out. Just whatever it is you want to share. This is an open space and it's a safe space, and then you can share some of those experiences that you'd like to share. And now I'll move on to ask one of my questions that I was going to pen down to give the audience a privilege, but everyone is asking a bit shy.
Sorry,
I don't know
Debbie,
why.
did you ask a question? Because I didn't catch that. Sorry.
No, I'm yet to ask a question. I'm about to ask it. Yes. So I think one of the questions I was just thinking of is, a lot of the times we are so inundated by all the things that are going on wrong, the things, the surplus issues that we are grappling with. And I just want, to throw in a positive thing in there by asking you, if you can think of a time, if you can think of a time when someone with no experience or disability or mental health truly became a partner, and what made them different? That it was not just tokenism, it was not just, oh, we just want our logos out there. They truly became a partner, and how did that make a difference? And it's going to be a two-pronged question. I also want to link this question with another question. Okay, I'll just let you take that, and then we have a hand that is raised, and then I'll yield the mic to that person.
Okay. I think that has happened quite a number of times. Funny enough, especially at the start of She Writes Woman, I think some of our early adopters, so to speak, were people who perhaps were not directly affected by the issues that we spoke about. Well, one of them is now on our board. And it was just so raw and just so fluid how we got to know each other on social media, and she just endeared to our work, and just like that, oh, I want to meet, we met, just like that, introduced our work to a network of high network individuals. And I would say that when I look at certain things that have happened down the line and I try to trace back, I will trace back to her, even though she was not connected or anything of that sort. It was the fluidity of it. It was the sheer purity of the entire engagement that I think has also sustained our relationship till date. And so I think that was definitely one time that I think about that. The other time will be, I think this was more international, and it's just I've been so privileged to have people who just find out my story or find out the story of She Writes Woman and the work that we do. And just by virtue of that, for some reason, even though they are not directly affected by it, tend to just want to invest a lot of time opening the right doors for us, getting us into the right places, putting us in contact with the right people, sending opportunities our way, or advocating for us in places that perhaps we haven't gotten to, and things like that. And so that's just what I think about when you mention things like this. Yeah,
that's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear such stories. We have 2 hands raised. I have Magdalene Hills, the host. Can you please unmute her and also allow her to open her video if she wants that, so that she can ask her question? Hello, can you hear me? Magdalene, can you confirm if you can unmute yourself? Great. Okay, she has been unmuted. Magdalene, please go ahead. I don't think we can hear her, so maybe we'll move to Patricia Nenadi Pam, and then when we can hear Magdalene, we'll take her. Patricia Nenadi Pam, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, it's a great privilege to be here. This is a very great program. I've been educated and enlightened. I live with a disability for over 2 decades now. I had an road traffic accident, had a spinal cord injury, and I've been on wheelchair. Also, I have a child, a daughter with a disability. She was giving birth, with congenital heart disease, needed heart surgery. After 4 years, we're able to get funding for the heart surgery abroad. We're back, and then they discovered that she was not meeting up with her milestones. We did an MRI scan for the brain. There was an issue, so she has been, so just yesterday, I was just overwhelmed. I said, wow. So there are moments that I just look at her, and I may be emotional because for a very long time, I've been, like being strong. It's like I just numbed being emotional when it comes about, how I said, what kind of a future will she have? Issues of challenges, here and there, So I've been in the development sector for about a decade now. But issue of mental health and disability, just getting to know it, like today. I just looking at what kind of support, just overwhelmed with so many challenges. So it's a good program. Maybe after this event, I'll see how I can link up. Let me have any kind of support that can just lift my spirit. It's not easy living with the disability. Daily life is challenging. You're equally running an NGO for persons with disability, no funding. Nigeria is just, the issues are just overwhelming. So it's a great program, and I wish I could, continue engaging with you people so that mental health, I need help. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Patricia, for sharing your story. I mean, it's good to know or hear some stories like this and know that you're not alone. And this Open Mic for Disabilities is something we're going to be doing. We do on a monthly basis, so we'll also be looking at several other aspects. Before we close out for today, of course, I'm going to let our Hauwa speak on different areas where you can get support for mental health, and then so that we can share it for as many people that want to tap into that. I can't see Magdalene anymore. I was thinking that Magdalene had her hands raised and wanted to ask a question. Magdalene, if you're having any difficulties, unmuting yourself or network challenges, you can easily just type your questions. Okay, Magdalene is back. Magdalene, you're unmuted. Can you speak?
Before Magdalene speaks, please, I just want to speak to
great.
Madam Patricia. Just wanted to say something. First off, thank you so much for sharing that, ma'am. And it's so interesting because the meeting I was in right before this was with the Spinal Cord Injury Association of Nigeria. So we spent the last 2 hours listening to some of the challenges that are very peculiar to the community. And so, first off, on that regard, I wanted to just commend you and thank you for your resilience. On the other hand, I also wanted to talk about, commend you and also thank you from the angle of being a parent and a caregiver. Because if there's anything that we've learned over the last 2 weeks with our consultations across these 7 organizations, and we're still going to get to 9 by the time we're done with the next 2 organizations, is the role of caregivers and parents is hugely, hugely overlooked. When we say it, it's like, oh yeah, of course, but we don't really think about the role of the caregivers, how the family system gets altered by disability through mental health issues, or how disability has a spillover beyond just the children, but to the parents. You have a child with a disability, chances are that the parents live with a psychosocial disability, because the very bare minimum of being a default caretaker is even a traumatic event on its own. The resources that go into raising a child with a disability or a health condition, the economic opportunities that you have to roll back on either by default or by choice cannot even be nearly captured, except through their own lived experiences. And I'm so thankful that I will be meeting next week with one of the leaders, if not the leader, of the Association of Parents and Caregivers of Children with Disabilities. And I just wanted to mention that we have not forgotten you, and we see you. We see the role of the caregiver, especially that it falls by default disproportionately on women and girls than any other person within the society. The role of the caregiver is so powerful. And so I really, really want to thank you for sharing, Madam Patricia. And I hope that we're able to, in the coming weeks and months, do work specifically with spinal cord injured persons, but also for caregivers as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hauwa. I will take Magdalene now. Magdalene, if you can hear me, you have the mic. Just go ahead and ask your question or share your experience, whichever it is. Okay, we still can't hear Magdalene. So I'll just... All right, I'll just shared a link for a free and unlimited teletherapy. So please, I know that this is going to be helpful for so many of us on this call. So kindly just copy that link and book a time and get the help that you need. I don't know if Crystal is still with us in the room before I conclude yes, she is. Hi, Crystal. Just like to yield the mic to you for the questions you had and also vote of thanks to.
Oh, I think I saw Abe's hand up. There's someone whose hand was up for a bit.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Just
I
seeing it
think
now.
we take that question and then we'll just wrap up. But I mean, for the free link also where you can have this access, we'll also be sharing it across all social media pages for IREDE. So you get to know how you can get help should you need help in any way. We'll just allow you to ask your question, Abby.
Ava, you can unmute your mic and ask your question or share your experience. Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
I just want to commend the organizers of this.
It's very important, and thank God I joined at the very right time when Hauwa was speaking. You guys are doing an amazing job. Like Hauwa stated, 2 weeks back, she has been doing an amazing job. She was she was with us too, and I must commend. She's doing something really that a lot of people don't get to talk about it, and is often overlooked, which it is eating us deeply. And for the last woman that just spoke about her child, um, I just want to lend a voice to her that she's not alone. We are with her. And I was actually asking if it's possible to get her contact so that I could send it immediately to the president, women, parents with children with disability, so that should be added to the WhatsApp group. I don't know if that is possible. So it wasn't really a question, but just to commend the organizers of this very section. It means a lot, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Ava would get her number and then share it with you so that it won't be made public on here. So we'll get that and then share it with you directly. And just I'm just thinking of how we can also reach you to share that. So kindly confirm if you registered to join this meeting or if you just joined via the link. I think that would help us in reaching out. And then we also have one more hand that is raised, I believe, to ask a question. Quickly, Emmanuel Oladipo, you can unmute and ask or share an experience.
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hauwa and all of the organizers for this program. I just want to quickly add something that where an area we also need to look at is media perception and coverage in promoting awareness as a tool for advocacy. You know, Mr. Hauwa was making an example of how, PWDs have been portrayed in the past. For example, a comedian is making a joke about maybe a person, that person is behaving, and of course that becomes a perception. So imagine if you have a movie producer, produce a movie and probably, so I'm sorry, I'm visually impaired, probably a blind person is being portrayed as maybe a hero or as doing something very great, and you add that across different movies or across different programs that, because really everybody is a participant of media coverage and that forms perception, okay, so I'm just saying that I just want to add, for people, involved with advocacy, let's see how we can, of course, take this awareness even to the media, media, and I don't just mean mainstream media. I mean even those that are not in the mainstream, movie producers, directors, and all of those things, because they help, change perceptions, and of course that can be a very good for advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think that, it's very interesting to hear you talk about that because it was our March edition of OpenMicForDisabilities. That was the particular topic we just, addressed, and we had Mrs. Grace Jerry, founder of Inclusive Friends Association, to speak on that. And that was some of the things we were addressing in that conversation. So it's good to also hear you just speak on that and also bring that even in this conversation. We still have another hand. I like that it's really engaging, but we have limited time, but I will still let you, Mercy, speak, and then we'll just sort of conclude everything. Thank you. You have the mic. You can go ahead.
Everyone. So my question is to, I think, both IREDE and Hauwa herself. I was going to ask that since IREDE are having a lot of engagement as well with child amputees, with children with disabilities, I don't know if we also consider them as in the component of this, as in their mental health. How are we engaging with them? And then that is for IREDE now. for Hauwa, I wanted her to like offer like possible best practices on how we can best engage with children with disabilities, since most of them also go through a lot of mental health issues.
And thank you, Mercy, for that question. We'll take the second person so that we'll just sort of wrap it up from the audience end and just address whatever question we have. So Rap Radio Africa, if you can hear me, you have the mic. Hello. Okay, I don't think we can hear him. So I'll just move back to my guest and Crystal to answer the question that Mercy raised. She asked both IREDE and our guest speaker a question. So I'll take our first and then we'll take Crystal last, so that we'll sort of round up.
All right, thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you, Mercy, for that question. Very interesting question. Best practices on engaging children with disabilities, I believe, was the question. So if I look at it from the human rights perspective, children have what's called evolving rights. So according to like the CRPD, so we have evolving rights, and that means that because a child is continuously growing to adulthood, the rights they have today will change and morph over time. I have a principle, irrespective, and it ties in very well with it anyway, is that irrespective, even though the caregivers and the parents of the child, or whoever the legal guardian is of the child, is the default sort of person to involve in sort of providing care and support, I personally believe that the children should also be in the room at certain ages. So that's where the evolution and that's sort of like the evolving aspect of it comes in. Obviously, if the child is like, let's say, under 7 or something, or under 5, then maybe they may not be able to communicate certain thoughts and stuff like that. But as they grow, there are certain thoughts and certain ways that they are able to communicate certain things. As far as their mental health or whatever their lived experience might be, or whatever predisposes them, whether it's a disability or some other sort of social issue. And so I generally prefer that people do not rule out talking to children at all. I actually prefer that people do not do that. I mean, it's kind of thinking from a pediatrician perspective. You don't tell pediatricians to not just talk to the parents alone. They still engage with the children. How they engage with, maybe a 1-year-old will be different from a 3-year-old and different from a 5-year-old and like that and like that. So that's where the evolution comes in. So I believe that to a large extent, when you say children, it's a range. That's such a broad range. And so there are specific ways rather that you would engage with different ages of children as we go forward. And we can look at that in terms from a developmental perspective on the one hand, or if the child is atypical, you can look at that from the child's own development milestones as well, and use that to elicit, in addition to the caregiver or the legal guardian, what you need to get. I think sometimes the challenge usually lies in the fact that we're trying to impose our sense of how we want to collect information on the subject that we're trying to collect information on. So I want to have a conversation, and like, oh, that person can have a conversation with me, and then so I'm going to defer to somebody else. No, you have to try to meet the person from a place of the person's perspective. So I won't get to go to a child and start to speak adult speak grammar, and try to say, oh, she can't really communicate. Let me talk to mommy. You will talk to mommy and you will talk to the child. And so that's for me is like the universal overarching sort of best practice when it comes to children. I think it's very important to take extra steps in terms of creating some levels of safeguarding. However well-intentioned you might be, safeguarding is so powerful. We have seen it abused. We have seen children put in very unsafe environments in the name of caregiving and care and help and all of that. And so we must not in any way, shape, or form skip safeguarding. Sexual harassment policies and things like that. We must put all of those things in place when we're dealing with children. We must also have fantastic feedback mechanisms for different levels and different ages of children as well. We must also train the caregivers, because what happens is that as a child, it's almost like your mental health is intertwined with the adults that are supervise or take care of you. And so if the adults are going through certain kinds of things, there will be a natural spillover on the well-being of the child, including their mental health. And so that's something that you want to think about. The environment as well. So if you're looking at the child that has a bit more privilege in terms of where they live versus another child that's living somewhere within a community that doesn't have some basic necessities, again, the environment is also a determining factor. It's not just the infrastructural part, it's also what is inside the home that may not be evident in the environment. It could be the beliefs and the values and the attitudes and thoughts around, so not to make it sound overwhelming, it's the same things that we would consider anyway when it comes to like deploying with other adults and all. It's just that when it comes to children, somehow we just kind of forget and just feel like, oh, it's a child, let's just talk to. No. So I'm just highlighting the same things, except that I'm telling you that it evolves with time. There's extra caution in terms of safeguarding and recognizing that there is an evolving way of communicating and extracting information from a child versus how you can, talk to an adult.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Hauwa. Rap Radio Africa still wants to try asking his question. So you have the mic now, please, briefly and quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Hauwa. Thank you, everyone on the call. My name is Ikenna. I have a personal, affinity drawn to people with disabilities, whether it's mentally or physically, because I've seen this happen a lot of times. And I'm partly one, like Chris, I like to say sometimes, I'm partly one. I had a surgery done in my hip. So before then, I know how life felt. And even way before I did that, I've had classmates, I've had friends of friends, I've had relations that I see how people treat them. I see how they are relegated to the background. They don't want to be heard. They feel like there's nothing to say. So having said that, there are a lot of things that are missing and that we can do differently and better. Being someone with experience in the media space, I was thinking along the sides of awareness, capital letters, awareness, having this conversation is one of the things that I see across the board. We must keep having this conversation so that people will know. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. The right people pay attention and hear, and they begin to join in the cause. So I was thinking along the side of a weekly podcast, for instance, something that we're going to take away from calls to like a location, a live location where we have a Hauwa talking, and we have people with those are going through that, for want of a better word, for lack of a better word, stigma, going through that, come have that conversation, come share their experiences, come take questions. So it's visual, people can see, people can feel, and I feel that would draw more awareness and the right people would partner and blow it out of proportion even better. Just something I've been mulling over in my heart about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ikenna, for that wonderful contribution and sharing that. We're running out of time, so I'll just yield the mic to Crystal to round up and also answer Mercy's question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think I'd answer Mercy's question very briefly. Hauwa has done a very good job of just really explaining how it works when it comes to children with disabilities. But at IREDE Foundation, one of the key things that we do is we give psychosocial support to the child and also to the parents. But we don't do this alone. We partner with other organizations, other mental health organizations, and they help us deliver this when it comes to the children. But Hauwa is very, very clear. In fact, if you look at the kind of work we're doing we're ensuring that we have a lot of children at the table. And we also do have, young persons with disabilities at the table, making the decisions themselves, lending their voice. And that's why when you look at the comic books that we do produce in IREDE called the Iredians, having different kind of disabilities expressed, one of the things that we do is get the feedback from the children that is incorporated into the next set of, issues and editions that we do have. At the end of the day, we will not exhaust all the things that we need to do on this. But I just want to say a very big thank you to Hauwa for agreeing to be on this show today, because I know it took you a lot to just make out time to be here for us. And we are so thankful that you could make it. And you were very open and really sharing with us from the depth of your heart. It's not textbook. And so thank you so much. And for the work you do also, thank you so much. Would also want to say a very big thank you to Disability Rights Funds, because it wouldn't have been possible if we do not have the sponsorship from Disability Rights Funds to ensure that we engage in these conversations and we bring it to the table in terms of mental health, and when you think of it as a disability. And finally, to everyone that is listening today, thank you for joining us to be a part of this open mic. We want to invite you to be a part of the next open mic. You will get emails from us, you will see our adverts, but it happens every third Wednesday of every month. We bring different issues that affect persons with disabilities, not just persons with disabilities, but also their families, their employers, their friends, every stakeholder, everyone that has something to do with a person with disability. And by the time you look at it, even if you don't have a disability yourself, you probably know someone that does, or you are involved in one way or the other. So we want you to join us and be a part of what we do. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. We look forward to seeing you at the next open mic. Debbie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for that. You've covered all the grounds. I just want to also just thank everyone who joined, everyone who contributed. Your contributions were valuable. Thank you so much, our guest speaker, for squeezing us in into a tight schedule and, just pouring her heart, her wealth of knowledge. I'm just going to be repeating what Crystal said at this point, so I'm not going to be speaking much. There's a comment in the section in the chat that I can see talking about persons with disabilities in the workplace. And it's very important that you said that, because one of our first conversation on OpenMicForDisabilities was addressing that, and it's still on our social media. And we also have an employability training for persons with disability, that a call for application for persons with disability to apply for an employability training with the IREDE Foundation, still under this project, is on our social media platforms. We are extending the deadline. The deadline was supposed to be yesterday, but we're extending it. So, and that may be something you would like to look at, Magdalene. And we also developed a recruitment toolkit to address some of these issues that you highlighted in the comment as regards how persons with disabilities are treated in the workplace. So that's what we're doing to address some of these issues. Thank you once again. Do have a lovely, lovely afternoon, and continue to spread the word and the lessons that you have learned from here. Do have a lovely afternoon. Bye for now.